mean, is that right? Are we right here? Well, I'm right here. And, well, I can say welcome back to my show. If that's what you want to call it, because I would call it my show. Because that's my life, right? Like, my life is my show. And who can say what's gonna happen in there? Well, I'm basically the only person who can make really good claims about what might happen, because I'm the one living it, right? I'm the one living my life. And if I'm the one living my life, then I'm the one experiencing it. And if I'm the one experiencing it, then I also have the right to change whatever I want so that my life becomes the way that I would like it to be. Right? You know, I could just leave you with that question, right? I could just leave you with that question. Because that's a really, really good question. Do you have the right to change things in your life? Well, the experiences that I have made is that people are really, really afraid to move on. To move on, right? And why are they afraid to move on? Well, I can tell you. Because they're afraid, right? They live in fear. And so something I have to clarify why this episode has been titled, or this recording has been titled Trust and or Fear, What's Real? Because to some people they think it's a matter between, trust or fear. But it's always trust and fear. Because there is fear, I need to have trust. Yeah. But can you say because there's trust and then I need to be afraid? Well, that doesn't really make sense, does it? But trust is actually something that I have to accumulate. Some people just say, just trust in the universe. But what are you going to trust in if you don't know what you're standing on? If you're just going to walk your life, I'm just going to trust that everything's going to work out fine. It sounds a bit like fear, right? Because if you just say, I'm going to trust everything's going to work out fine. But what's going to work out fine? I mean, are you aware of the consequences of your actions? Because if you're walking around like this, maybe you want to be really happy, yeah? And then you say, I'm gonna trust it's gonna work out fine. But then what are you doing? You're just walking around talking. That brings me back to the question, are you a liar? Or, words are birds, are turds. You can just say, I trust everything's gonna work out fine. But when a feeling strikes you and it says, go out and hike now, and you don't do it, then what? Right, so if your feeling is trying to tell you something, that's your heart's desire. That comes from a place of trust. Your feeling is telling you, stop seeing those friends because they're really bad for you. That's your feeling that's telling you that. And every time you listen more to your fear, because what does fear do? It makes you run to people that are actually bad for you, but because you just have nobody else to hang out with. You rather hang out with, I don't know, really weird people that are really stuck in their lives and that are not going anywhere. And that's why you go to them. Because they're stuck. So you can't move on because you're afraid, you're holding on. You're like clinging for dear life. But actually not. Because you just think, and that's the basic principle of fear. Like, the basis of what humans are afraid of is death. We're all, to some degree, afraid to die. Unless we start working with that fear. I often have this fear confronting me, my fear of death. But I've also confronted it already so many times and I realized I'm still alive. And if I would have died, I wouldn't know it, right? I just would be gone. And that means, in a sense, I have faced death already dozens of times in crazy situations. Every time you face fear, you also face death. Because what are you so afraid of? To getting injured? What are you really afraid of? Are you afraid of scratching your arm when you walk through bushes? Or are you afraid that that scratch is going to infect and then you're gonna die? Or are you really afraid of the pain? Because is that really pain? Cannot pain in a certain way and to a certain extent not also be like exhilarating? There's a reason why people do get themselves whipped and stuff. I wouldn't get myself whipped, but there is a method. It's called paida lajin, and it means, I think paida means slapping and lajin means stretching, and it means you're continuously slapping your arm, and that unblocks your meridians, which are really fine energy lines throughout your body and that are often blocked. Now, I've done that sometimes, and at some point it gets really painful. But if you keep doing it, you will also realize that you can actually breathe through the pain. If you just breathe into your stomach, it's all going to be all right in the end. So you keep going with your method, and you breathe into your stomach, and you realize, wow. At one point, the pain just vanished. There was just the slapping, but the pain was gone. Okay, if I stop now, and then I would continue, the pain would probably be worse than before. But now I'm also, I'm already more sensitive right now. And that's the problem we have in this kind of society, because we are all kind of sensitive to pain and to fear, because we always live in comfort. Because there's actually nothing to really scare us anymore. Why do you think we watch all these horror movies? Because we actually want to be really scared. But a movie cannot give you what an experience of, let's say, being out alone at night would give you. Or, sometimes I was really afraid when I was standing on my slackline, and it was, I set it up a bit higher than usually. And then you sit on there and you want to get up. There was a real blockage. I couldn't stand up. Now, how do you deal with that? Do you pack up and go home? Do you go to the side where it's not as high? Or do you say it's a challenge, I'm gonna see how it feels? Okay, I'm not an idiot, so I also, I sit there and then I gather my wits, right? I gather some energy or some power or whatever you want to call that. And then I sit like cross-legged on the slack line, and then I start breathing, and then I push myself up. And then I stand, and I realized as I pushed myself through the fear, I realized why I was so afraid to stand up. And the realization was, well, I was afraid to injure myself, because of my previous experiences. Because I did have injuries, but they also all healed. And I learned from those injuries, right? I'm not repeating these things. I learned from my injuries. And then I make choices that allow me to do what I want to do. But, with a bit more skill. A bit more, maybe tactical. Because if you don't have experience with a dog, for instance, as a young kid, you often see these young children, doggy. Yeah, and then they run towards the dog, and what's the dog gonna do? He might bark at you, and to a child that's like, right? And then there's other children who, the dog barks and the child just go, and just hugs it anyway. Also everybody's different. Some children are born with a lot of fear, and some children are born and they just trust in everything. It's the stories you read about Yogananda in the autobiography of a yogi. He seemed to have a lot of trust since a very young age. The stories he's describing in this book, he has trust and he just goes for it. And you realize when you have trust and you act according to your trust, because you can say, I trust, but all your decisions are driven by fear. And if you're driven by fear, what does that mean? That means you're running away from it. You're always running away from fear, right? It's like, instead, what trust does, this is my fear. Oh, wow, let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at it. What does my fear say? Well, your fear says a lot of things. You're gonna die. Yeah? You knew that when you came into this life. You knew it already. Because the promise, that's like the safest thing in the world. The safest thing in the world. When you're born, you're gonna die. When you are born, you're gonna die. So why do you want to get out of death? Because death is part of life. Duality. Duality. When people do this, it's like stay in the middle. Stay in the middle. Connect with your center. Some people just do this. There's no meaning to it because they just do it. Just the hand gesture isn't just it. You also have to feel what it means. You have to have an understanding, some kind of knowledge maybe. Oh, yeah. Nobody takes that serious. It's a very good greeting method actually. I bow to the place in yourself that some people call God. You can call that oneness. You can call that, pure creation, right? This is the whole idea of bowing like this, is what they say in Avatar, the movie with the blue people, It's, I see you, it's not like I see you, this fleshy thing. No, I see you inside of there, the real you, right? The thing that wants to come out and show itself, but because it's afraid, it's like, I'm just gonna be like everybody else. I'm gonna wear a suit, and I'm gonna get the shoes everybody else is wearing, and I'm gonna eat the food everybody else is eating. Some people, they actually rather would be vegetarian. But because their fathers are like, a real man eats meat. Yeah, they can't do it. Even mothers are like this. Everybody's like about competition. Everybody wants to be I'm a real man, I eat meat. No, do you know what a real man does? He takes a knife and goes hunting. Yeah? So if you want to eat meat, but you don't like killing, then what's the point of eating meat? Right? That's how I see it. You have to earn that kind of stuff. But to just sit around and eat meat that's been raised in mass production sites because a man eats meat. Such bullshit. Like, which man eats meat? The man that sits at home on the couch and watches TV? I mean, is that a man? Is that a man? Is that somebody that, man eat meat? Are you a man? Can you hold your ground? Like, have you faced great perils? Like, greater perils than, pushing through, all Star Wars movies in one evening? Is that the greatest peril you can face with lots of energy drinks? But that's the people we're dealing with today. That's our idols, our role models. People who just say, a man eats meat. It needs even. Nobody needs anything, right? So when you're dealing with these kind of things, right? So it's a very basic example of somebody who actually, every time he eats meat, he feels like he cheated to himself. I know a lot of these people. They eat meat just because everybody else does it and then they feel safe. But actually what they really want is to eat vegetarian. But they don't have the courage. Wow, that's better. But they don't have the courage to eat it. Wait. I mean, they don't have the courage not to eat meat. So this is already a very simple example where trust and or fear comes in. Because fear makes you eat meat, although you actually don't want to. Because what you want is to be a vegetarian. Or at least to eat less meat. Because if you really look at what meat is and how it's been produced, I mean, nobody can tell me that they actually enjoy eating that. They're just eating it because they've been brainwashed into believing that they need to eat it. I never eat meat, and you can see what I'm doing here at home. The kind of exercises I'm doing for 1.5 hours. I'm moving, and I'm vegetarian. I'm sometimes drawn between, am I now vegan or am I vegetarian? But at the moment I can say that vegetarian works for me. And I can definitely say I don't need meat. Ever. I haven't eaten meat in I'd say a little over 2 years maybe. I also never take B12. That's just bullshit. Because that's another way how your fear manifests. Oh my god, now I'm vegan. I have to eat B12 because otherwise what? Nothing. So fear has a lot of different facets. Fear isn't just, you're running away from something or you're shitting your pants. There's a lot of ways fear shows itself. And sometimes it's even a bit ridiculous to be afraid of something. Because when you're eating meat because you're afraid to do something wrong, then you're eating your own fear. You're eating your own fear. Your fear is pushing you into eating something you actually would rather not eat. So at least it's something to think about and to educate yourself. Because what is ignorance? Ignorance, in a sense, is fear. Because you don't want to look at it. You're too lazy, and that's usually, you're afraid. You're afraid to look at what is actually going on, because all the information is already out there. You just have to start educating yourself. So when you have some second thoughts about eating meat, then look at it. Watch that movie Earthlings and really face that shit. And you know what you have to deal with then? You have to deal with the fact that you've eaten that kind of stuff for the past couple of years. And that's then shame. And shame might actually drive you. It's also a manifestation of fear, I would say. Because for me, fear is like a very basic thing. And then lots of stuff builds up on it. So anger is often a product of fear. Right? So if you're in a war and you're afraid to die, you're gonna be angry and kill the other person first. But if you're not afraid to die, well, you'd probably just die. And then people who are afraid to die would say, well, he was an idiot because he didn't fight for his life. Well, to be honest, I don't know what I would do if I would be if somebody would really threaten my life. I'd probably, I wouldn't say kill me. It's like playing chess, right? I think at a certain point, you realize it's checkmate. Now it's checkmate, right? There's no way out of this, and then you give in. But if I see a way through, I'm just gonna take it. And if I want to take my way through, right? Because I know I'm gonna die, right? I've been born, I know I'm going to die. Most people, when they think of death, they think like, oh no, rather eat something. Or rather drink a coffee. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. That's how people live. That's how people live. And then they try to find all these ways to get out of death, but you can't get out of death because eventually you're going to die. And imagine what kind of existence you would have if you would manage to find some way to cheat death. You'd still be afraid to die. So you would live an eternal life and you would be afraid to die all the time. I mean, that's terrible. I'd rather just die then at some point. Instead of carrying around my fear with me. Oh my God, now I'm immortal, but I'm still afraid to die. It's so terrible. Plus, life would become really boring. I mean, what would you do? I mean, I already now, I'm happy I found what I want to do. So I can just do that. But imagine, now I'm doing it, imagine I would have to do that for eternity. That seems a bit like hell to me. So at one point, I certainly want to do something else. But the realization I've made is, at a certain point, everything gets boring. Right? And then if life starts to get a bit boring, sure, you can make changes, but now you got used to, you loved certain people, and then you feel like you loved enough. You have done this enough, you have done that enough, right? I've eaten enough meat in my life. So at one point I could say, I want to stop with it, because it doesn't give me anything anymore. So just stop with it, and not just, right? So how does trust come into all of this? Well, the first thing, some people think they don't have trust. Well, what is trust? But if you take one step, isn't it kind of trust that you're not falling through the wall? That you're not falling through the ground? Then you could say, yeah, but the ground is solid. Yeah, but is it? Because to me it's not solid, it's a mash of energy. And energy is something, air is energy. And I'm certainly falling through air. I don't really know how that works. But I have the feeling that it has to do with trust. That if I put one place in front of me, I trust that I'm going to land there. So in the end, it's kind of my trust that sets an intention. I have a feeling and I want to make a step. And then I make a step. And then I land. And I say, oh wow, it worked. And I take another step. That's how a child learns to walk. A child doesn't really know what it's doing. It has to figure it out. So you can see if you have a newborn baby in your arms, everything's like moving like this. Almost like an old person with Parkinson, right? It's like, everything's like, what? They have to figure out, how do I place my hand where? How do I channel my energy so that my hand moves in such a fashion? And according to the intention the child has, the body starts to change. So all you can do is you set an intention, and this intention is move your hand. That's how children learn to move. And then the body starts to adjust to it, right? Your trust starts to manifest your body around you. That's how I see it. Because the more I trust, the stronger I can hold myself. So trust is, in a way, connecting with your center and holding your own space, right? And I can create a space of trust where then other people can come into and feel good, right? You may realize that sometimes you stumble across a person on YouTube and somehow they make you feel really agitated. They make you feel really agitated. It's like their whole demeanor, the way they are, it's like, I don't really want to be here. And then you stumble into another person's channel and you think, wow, that feels really comfortable. Of course, that's what you want, right? That's what I sometimes think. Hopefully people really like it here, right? Hopefully people really like it here. All I can say is I like it here, right? And I like to create spaces, but I also like to experiment. Because I'm afraid. So every time I stand here and make a video, I also have to have at least a tad bit of courage. Because this is what I want to do, right? This is what I want to do. I don't want to go live all the time, but I want to stand here and record things. And I want to be comfortable to talk. So going live to me is also the next stage of standing on a stage and talking about things. Because the way I pick a topic. I pick a topic and the topic is the whole thing, right? So you could say the topic for this recording is life itself, or this session is life itself, yeah? It's a metaphor, right? It's like the totality of it is life itself. It's this recording, I'm talking about something, I have a topic. And I want to fill that topic with words that explain something about it, that give meaning to it, but most of all that carry a feeling. Because if I cannot give you a feeling, because I haven't felt what I'm talking about, then my words are empty. But if I know what I'm talking about, because I've been there and I've done these things, then I can transmit a certain feeling to you through the camera. So if I know what trust is, and I feel trust right now in this moment because standing here and talking is an act of trust. Right? If I would give in to fear, I would have taken that job at the boulder hole. But I decided, no, I'm going to keep doing this because I trust that my feeling is guiding me in the right direction. Because I know I want to be somewhere, right? I know I have other things to do. But first I need to do this here. I don't know why. I cannot see why I have to stand here and talk right now. I don't know who's going to listen to this or when they're going to listen to it. I don't even know if they're ever going to listen to it. All I know is that partly I'm also doing this for myself. Because I want to move on. And I said I want to be self-employed, so I have to be self-employed. And so I'm working because I'm self-employed, so I have to give myself jobs. So what I do the entire day is looking for clues what to do next. And to get these clues, I have to have trust. Because when a clue comes, it's like a vision. It's like a certain, wow, okay, wait, I'm supposed to do that now? Because if I'm trying to control it, I can't do what I'm doing. Because I'm doing everything based on trust. My feeling, I trust my feeling. And my feeling tells me, do a recording now and name it like this. So sometimes I sit there and I try to figure out how to name the recording, how to name the session, and then I feel into it, and then the words come. First I have a feeling, and then I have the words. And that brings me back to fear. When you hear the biggest part of everyone, when you hear them talk, you can hear that they are talking from a place of fear. Because that's why people are lying, because they're actually afraid. So people who lie are afraid, right? People who hide themselves are afraid. Because they're afraid to be injured, they're afraid of all of things. You know, I ain't hiding myself. You know, I'm out in the open. You know, I record basically my entire life. You know, not everything. Because there are certain things that I like to keep private. Right? When I watch a movie, I don't need to record that. Because when I watch a movie, I want to watch the movie. But if I would film myself watching a movie, then I would feel inclined to comment on that movie. And I don't really want to do that. Because I'd rather just take the time and watch the movie, man. Yeah, it's already, you know, sometimes I eat and I watch a movie, but I feel like that's okay. So how does trust play into this? And how did I learn to trust more? Well, I remember a situation. It was basically before all of this content creation happened. And I remember somebody asking me, well, it was my dad. He was asking me to explain why I was doing certain things. Because he wanted to help. But I realized nobody can help me. I mean that. Nobody can help me to do what I want to do. Because I'm going somewhere where nobody that I see has ever gone. I don't know anybody who's self-employed and enjoys it. And that's where I wanted to go. You know, I wanted to do something that my heart was telling me. If you speak from the heart, you come from a place of trust. And when you come from a place of trust and you go into the unknown, you know, I don't have people telling me what to do. I don't have that. I tell myself what to do because I trust my own feeling that somehow it is going to work. And so he was asking me, you know, can I help you somehow? Or he wanted me to explain what I was trying to tell him. And I said, I cannot explain that to me, because if you knew what I was talking about, you wouldn't have to ask me to explain it. So I cannot explain trust to you. Because it's a feeling, and if you don't have that feeling, right, you can just look at a person, you know, somebody who has a lot of insurances, your life insurance, and insurance for this and for that. That means you live in a place of fear. And when you live in a place of fear, you will never understand where I'm coming from, because I'm coming from a different world. I mean that. I don't live in the same place that everybody else lives in. And I know that because when I'm trying to talk with them, all I hear is fear. All I hear is fear. And then I'm trying to explain myself to them, and it just doesn't work. So I live in a different universe. I'm from a different dimension, but I'm reaching out to you. And I'm saying I'm coming from a place of trust, and you're living in a place of fear. So if you want to get to that trust, you have to work yourself through your fear first. And once you've worked yourself through your fear, then you will understand what I'm on about. But if you listen to me and you're sitting in a place of fear, how do you want to understand how it looks on the other side? Right? It's like looking through a window Let's say you've been in this room all your life, and you're looking out the window and you're wondering how life could be outside. Then you're wondering how rain on your skin would feel like and the wind in your face. But you've never experienced it. So how are you supposed to get there? Well, you would have to break the window and just go outside. You know, it's like in that movie, The Secret Garden. It's actually a book. The book is very recommendable. I can really recommend that book. In fact, I have an audiobook. And I might read that. Maybe I might even read it. Maybe I might do more reading sessions. Who's to say, right? You know, because at this point, I'm still trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Because I'm not just doing random things. Because in a way, you see, that's another thing. Look at that guy. Okay, he's walking around like this. Yeah, that's how he walks around like. You just know if he would go there and he would do like this, he would fall on his ass. Because what he's actually doing, he's really straining himself to look like, I have it all together. But you can just tell that he hasn't, because he's walking around like this. Don't look at me, don't look at me, And the way he walks is like also really fast. You can even see in the way people are walking if they're actually afraid or not. Because they have this sense of, I'm being haunted, yeah? Somebody who lives in a place of fear, they move in a way like somebody's chasing them. Because they feel like they're being chased by death. That's how they are on the inside. Yeah? And then they're like, yeah, I'm listening to you, But actually on the inside they're like, yeah? So somebody who thinks he needs to train martial arts and go and fight people, that's usually people that are actually really afraid. And they want to face that fear. Well, why don't you just face that fear on the inside? Why do you have to beat people to a pulp to prove to yourself that you're not afraid? Because in the end, you're still gonna be afraid. Yeah. Is that going to ruin the recording? Maybe it's gonna stop. See, that's one reason why I don't really bother anymore to make noise. Because everybody makes noise. Now that's like the worst sound. I wish literally all electricity would just vanish. Sometimes I wish that, because then I wouldn't have to stand here. Then I would be outside in nature doing something else. There's a part of me that really hates electricity. So how can I say that I only like what I'm doing? Because a part of me also really dislikes it. Because the only reason I stand here and talk about this shit is because people don't know what they're talking about. Because people are living in a state of fear and they're destroying the whole planet over it. Greed is the fear of not having enough or having too little. Right? It's like a person that's drowning. He's just gonna grab everything. And somebody who's drowning is also really irritated. So most people are drowning in their own shit. Most people are drowning in their own trauma, in their own emotions. And that shows itself as greed. I want more, more and more money, because I want to be really powerful. And then you're gonna die anyway. So what are you leaving to the world? A big pile of rubble. And we're the generation that needs to make something out of that rubble. So we have to start taking responsibility and sorting out our own lives. And that means you have to start in the places where you're clinging. Because when you're clinging to things from the past, or things that, because everything that scares you is usually based on an experience that you've already had. You can even cling to fear itself, just fear. Yeah, I'm just clinging to fear. For what reason? Well, because everybody does that. Yeah, okay? I'm not doing that. I'm moving forward. And to stand here in this stupid room, which I actually quite like, without leaving the house and just recording, comes from a place of trust. Because I trust that if I keep going, it's going to get me somewhere at least. To whatever realization, right? I cannot see everything. I do have certain visions about what's coming in the future. But then I also have to prepare myself for that, right? I did have certain visions in my life that were, if I would have been just thrown into the vision, it would have destroyed me. I wouldn't have managed. But I somehow was able, life gave me enough time to work myself to a place where I can actually say, now I can see it. I can almost touch it. But then every day, when I feel like I can almost touch it, it just slithers away like, yeah, because there's a little bit of fear still left. So I'm working on that every day. I have to work it out, and that's why I move a lot. Because you move and you move. I don't want to wear this hat, but it's the Mad Hatter talks. You have to wear it. Be consistent, it says. Be consistent. Consistent with what? Well, with the amount of stuff you put out there. But sometimes you also have to step down a little and just do a bit less. Because if you're just always doing a lot and a lot and a lot, because you're afraid to do less, then you're also running around and you're being chased by your own fear. Like what I really want is to get more black tea from the Turkish shop. But I'm actually afraid to get it. Why? Was there an echo? No, why? Because I'm afraid to leave the house. The reason I'm afraid to leave the house is because I'm afraid that if I don't produce a lot of content, it will take years before people start listening to me. And that's a bit weird, isn't it? Because right now, what am I really talking about? No, I'm just talking about myself. It's like, what am I really talking about? Sometimes I'm really wondering, what am I really saying? Because in the end, I could probably stand here and say nothing and have the same effect as if I would just say. Because what it's really about is, I'm just there and I'm just trying to be as much in the face of everyone as I can be, so that they have to stop ignoring me at some point. That they have to ask themselves the question, what is this guy doing? Yeah. Well, what is he doing? He's trusting. He's trusting.